Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I am Razia Cooper, and I am the engagement coordinator here at the NASW New Jersey chapter. And we are so happy that you could join us today for our student programming, presentation, and public speaking 101 with our professional speaker, Queen G. I'm so excited to have her in the room, guys. Her energy, as you guys can see from her bright smile, is going to be infectious. Before we start, we just have a few housekeeping rules. When you signed up for this event, you agreed to the code of conduct, and we expect you to respect our presenter as well as your fellow attendees. We are delighted to have Gabrielle Gibson with us tonight, encouraging participation and questions. So if you have a question throughout the presentation, please drop it in the chat and we will get to it. This is going to be a very interactive program webinar. Our presenter loves participation, so she'll be looking for you guys to do that as you guys learn and identify your voice as a public speaker. And also we will have some time at the end for questions and answers. So don't be shy. We will encourage you to get off mute and come on camera if you would like and ask your questions directly to her. So before we get started, I do want to read her bio just so you guys can know who we have today. So let me do that really quickly. So today we have Queen G, Gabrielle. So dedicated to her craft, Gabrielle Queen G Gibson is a multifaceted creative, educator, and public speaker. Utilizing her diverse background in the arts, she spent years performing and teaching all over the United States and around the world, engaging diverse audiences on a variety of platforms. Her creative work investigates identity, challenges oppression, and reimagines community, culture, and faith as it reinforces her belief in the power of storytelling. As a professional spoken word artist, she won multiple titles, But in Poetry, Right About Now, Poets in Autumn National Tour, and Bandaloop have featured her work. She uses her affinity for words on and off the stage, lending her vocals to projects as a voice actor for clients such as Scholastics and Harvard, and as host of the Royal Room podcast. Her professionalism and passion presents her as a skilled consultant and copywriter. She has an extensive background in community development and education. Those experiences lend to engaging, enlightening, and culturally competent content when she creates curricula, collective programs, and consults for corporations and independent clients alike. She worked both domestically and internationally with over 17 years of experience in coordinating nonprofit workshop of facilitation, public speaking, youth development, and leading training. Currently, she is a NAS Creative Community Fellow, Southern Regional Coordinator for Wise and Wade in Ministry, and founder of Unfiltered December and Living Unfiltered Project. She manages Queen G Creatives full-time and facilitates for Roger Williams University part-time, and continues to formulate programs and strategies that prioritize the pursuit of equity, empathy, and education through creative and communication. So Queen G, take it away, take it away, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you for enduring the bio. I feel like the bio readings, I'm always like, I don't know what to do with myself, but I'm so glad to be here with you. At the heart of what I do, I feel like my superpower is empowering people, and I believe in the power of storytelling. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I hope y'all doing all right. I know you are social work students, so you've been bit by that bug of social good and wanting to leave the world a little bit better than how you found it, right? And I know that social work is not an easy major, so thank you for being here. I hope that I can provide some tools and some tips to help you feel more equipped and empowered to own your voice, your narrative, and be effective communicators and public speakers. So before we like super duper get rolling, one of the other things like I'm super into, is affirmations. I believe in kind of setting the space and setting the tone. My former students, when I was teaching business communications, gifted me with the name the affirmation maven or the affirmation aficionado, because we were always known to start our classes with affirmations. And it's the same. I just carry it everywhere with me. So if you would oblige me, I would love to start this session off with doing some affirmations. I know some of you have your cameras off, you're doing multiple things, so that's okay. You don't have to come off, you don't have to turn your camera on or come off mute. I ask that in good faith. It's super simple. It's a call and response type of thing. I'm going to say the affirmation, and then wherever you are, you're going to say it out loud yourself. I think that sounds kind of easy. Are we in? Can we do that? I think we can do that. Sounds good. Elizabeth said, yeah, okay, good, good, good. I've got at least one person with me. I think we can do it. Okay, so I'm gonna say, and I want you to say this. I don't care if nobody can hear you. I don't even care if your family is listening. When you say this, I want you to say it with like conviction. I want you to say it with confidence, like you're willing it into being, like you're declaring something, okay? So I will say the affirmation line by line. I'll say it, you'll repeat it. We'll move to the next one. I'll say it, you repeat it. It's a simple call and response. All right, the first affirmation. I have a voice and it matters. I'm pretending I can hear you. Very good. I have a story and it is mine to tell.
I have a story and it is mine to tell.
I am intelligent and capable.
I am intelligent and capable.
What I do not know, I am able to learn.
What I do not know, I am able to learn.
If I can change my mind, I can change my mood.
If I could change my mind, I could change my mood.
If I can change my mind, I can change my life.
If I can change my mind, I can change my life.
And I want you to tell yourself, I want you to muster up all the confidence that you can. And I want you to tell yourself, I've got this.
I got this.
You got this. I know that's right. You've got this. Okay, I feel like that kind of level sets the room. We want to make sure we set a tone of feeling like we can do this. Like, and if you're coming into this, whether you have the gift of gab, coincidentally, that's like my nickname, Gabby. But if you have the gift of gab, or maybe you're a performer and a speaker naturally like me, right? I'm a professional poet amongst other things. So much of the work that I do in my job is talking. And maybe you're comfortable with public speaking, or maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum and you are like so much of the population. And for so much of the population, do you know the number one fear is not, it's not arachnophobia. Even it's not even death. One of the I believe the number one fear is actually fear of public speaking. You may be in that category, you may be on that end, but wherever you are on the spectrum, the goal is that you have a voice and you have something to say. No, people can advocate for you, people can be your allies, but nobody can speak for you, right? So the goal is not to allow you to do everything else great and then hide behind the scenes, but it is to encourage you and empower you that everyone has a voice. And hopefully we can give you some tools in order to use that voice a little more effectively. Now, Razia told you I'm an interactive kind of girl. Y'all know I got a little background in education, so I like a little class participation. Yes, yes. So I've got a question for you, and you can either take yourself off mute to answer the question, or you can put it in the chat and I'll read it aloud. But the first question I have for you is, so when I say voice, right, that's the first thing we did. We said, I have a voice and it matters. When I say voice, like, what does that mean to you? What's one word that comes to mind when I say voice? Let me know in the chat, or come off mute, which is even better. Whichever one though, I'll definitely celebrate. What does voice mean to you? What's one word that comes to mind?
Privilege.
Ooh, I know I'm talking to social workers. Privilege. What do you mean by that? Can you give me a little context? Because it's a great answer.
Well, myself as a white woman, I have privilege generally when I'm in a workroom and when I speak. But also both as a white woman and as a social worker, I think that I'm working to use my voice for those that don't have a voice.
See, you're talking to like the I do diversity, equity, inclusion training. You're speaking to that part of me by identifying what it means to have privilege. And one of the functions of privilege is amplifying certain voices and silencing others. But what it can do is it can be a function of, I loved the heart behind what you're saying. What I actually love to say is, that everyone has a voice, and we can use privilege wherever we fall. Everyone has a form of privilege. We can use that privilege to advocate and amplify the voices that have been silenced, and the voices for those who feel like they don't have one. Because the truth is we all have one. It's just what systems, structures, and obstacles are stopping people from feeling like they can use theirs and stopping them from being heard. So excellent. That was like a perfect first response. Thank you for volunteering as tribute. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat. I see Razia said sound. Yes, I want you to think of that. Sound is something, it echoes and it reverberates, right? And so it's more than just how loud or softly we speak, but it's like when we use our voice, it reverberates. It has it resonates on a level. I think that's a great word. Liana, come on, Liana. Come on, Liana, connection. And let me know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I have no problems with name corrections because I want to honor your identity. So tell me how to say your name right if I pronounce it incorrectly. Liana says connection. I think that is super profound. And let me know in the chat if y'all want to expound on your answers. Feel free to share. But I think of connection too, right? How can I connect somebody with my story? How can I connect by listening to somebody else's voice? How can I carry stories with me? How can I share stories, right? Like that's definitely something that comes to mind. Anyone else want to tell me, when you hear the word voice, what comes to mind for you? Don't worry, guys. There's no pressure. But also, I'm kind of one of those facilitators who's okay with silence too. So we can let the silence permeate if you're thinking about it. Don't worry, I've got no problem with a little bit of silence. But some things that come to mind, or that have come to mind, in the chat is still open if anybody wants to jump in. But some things that come to mind or have come to mind when I have worked with other populations, including, I think the last time I did this session was with youth leaders, right? So some things that come to mind automatically for them, things like self-expression, the ability to communicate. They said power when someone tries to take it away, sharing thoughts and opinions without shame. Is that not powerful? That was from kids, y'all. Sharing thoughts and opinions without shame. That resonated deeply with me. And they said, what's real to you? Voice is what's real to you. Voice is a gift. Razia says the ability to influence. Did you know that we all carry that ability with us? How we use it, that's a Russian roulette, right? But we all have the capacity to influence, and recognizing voice is like one of the first steps that we take in order to do that. So we're going to be talking about a few things today. This is not going to be your traditional, like, these are the rules of public speaking. A lot of what we're talking about is going to be rooted in voice and authenticity. Yes, we're going to talk about strategies. We're going to talk about technical approaches. We'll talk a little bit about like even the shape of a speech, or like what impacts the audience and how to approach that. We'll go over this. And this is like a 101. So we can't dive deep, but we're going to be broad and we're going to cover a lot of bases. But it's going to be from the lens of knowing that your voice, the significance of your voice, and even as social workers, how you can use and amplify your voice in order to advocate and use the medium of public speaking, okay? So we'll talk about identifying that voice and owning your voice. we'll also talk about that thread, right? Like, here's the ownership of my voice, and then why is that important in public speaking? How does that translate to public speaking? Okay, second question. When you think of someone who has a strong voice, I want you to take a second. When you think of someone who has a strong voice, if you would like categorize them, this person has a really strong voice. Who do you think of? Who do you think of? I'm gonna give you all a second. Take yourself off mute or throw it in the chat. Okay. First thing in the chat is MLK, right? I mean, like, come on. When we think about somebody who has not only oratorical mastery and skill, but like what was said earlier before, like influence, and then also like advocacy, we're talking about allyship and advocacy, like, come on. I think that is such an excellent picture of what that looks like. It's 2022 and we still feel the ripple effect of impact of somebody like truly owning that authentic voice. What else though? It doesn't have to be like super famous world changer. That's what I'm talking about, Elizabeth. Exactly. My friend, I want to pronounce their name right. Katima.
Katima.
Can you tell me a little bit about Katima? Why is that voice? Why do you think of that strong voice?
She years ago, after Breonna Taylor, she's a young 24-year-old, said, I want to do something. She led a march on Frankfurt here. I'm in Kentucky. Thousands of people showed up, and now she's the one everybody looks at, and she uses her voice just any way she can. I'm an advocate. I see she's the activist. She's out there fighting, will get on any camera, and I'm just envious.
Boots on the ground, like voice multiplied to the masses.
I'm envious of her public speaking, and that's why I'm here. I want to be a better partner.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for even sharing that. Like, I feel like you talking about your friend makes me feel kind of like empowered. Like, yeah, like they are holding it down. I love hearing that. And I think there's something about that speaks to the theme you're going to hear a lot tonight too, is about authenticity. And there's something about having authenticity and conviction, not just talent, not just skill, not just strategy, but conviction and authenticity that made that impactful. And it wasn't like you had to be this person with this platform, with this much money, with this many resources. It was simply just the commitment and the conviction to say, I know my voice matters and I have to advocate and be, and you said you're the advocate, but they're the activist, right? Like it's I owe it to them. And I think there's a little thread of that even in the discipline that you all chose to study that says that I know voice matters. I know that we can't kind of leave things as they are. I think there's this little change agent gene that I think is prevalent in certain professional disciplines, right? I kind of see it in educators. I definitely see it in social workers. So that ties all of that in together. Okay, let's check the chat. I see Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, and Michelle Obama. Now I know you know what you're talking about, right? Like however you interpret their political careers, you know, we're talking about strength and impact, right? Janet, excellent responses. Feel free to expound either over the mic or like in the chat, because I would love to hear why you identified those people for sure.
I mean, I think that their politics aside, I think they are well-educated, well-spoken. But I hear Michelle Obama, actually, I just bought one of her books. I feel empowered as a woman.
Yeah.
And I can just listen to her. Like there's something about the way she speaks and you know, whether she's being like straightforward or just sort of shooting the breeze. I don't know. She's empowering to me. I think you know, for some reason, when I think of a great presenters in general,
Yes.
I do, and the voice, a different voice than what you mean, but like Nixon had that very distinct, strong voice.
That's
And
all part of it though. It's the metaphysical concept of a voice, but it's also literally the sound, like how it
sound,
resonates with
right,
your
right.
ear. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And
Yeah, I
with
knew you were
Bill
gonna get good.
Clinton, again, whether I like him or don't like him, it's
Yeah.
he had such poise, and he
Mhm.
had, you know, I wish that he would have done more things, but whatever, I still, you know, he's in my head when I think of what a good presenter looks like. Not looks,
Mm.
but
Mm.
is. And
Yeah.
for me, my struggle, I've had to present for many, many years, and sometimes I'm really good at it, and sometimes I suck. And I have to give this big presentation on Thursday at the school. And
Mm.
yeah, I've been rehearsing it in my head, but I haven't put it to paper, and I'm starting to get all like, ugh. And I agree with you that it's presenting is the number one fear over death. And I tell my kids that all the time, because 2 of the 3 can't get up and do it. And, you know, I'll say, take lessons. How would I take lessons when I'm so scared? You know, so it's that whole thing that gets
Right.
wrapped up in the anxiety, you know, to bring it back to social work, sort of comes over you, which is so when I saw this, I said, you know what? I could really learn something, and you're so fun and you know, friendly, and so I'm looking forward to this. Not to chit chat anymore, but thank you.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing, for expounding, for your transparency. Like that's all part of our story too, right? Part of the work is not, I've arrived and I figured it out and I'm polished and I get it every time. Like sometimes it's like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the nerves that come up. Let's talk about the weight that comes with saying yes to something you feel that you're called to do, or the rooms that sometimes we don't even feel like we belong in them, but you do. You belong in every room that you have the opportunity to enter in, right? How do we navigate those things? Like, thank you for introducing that. And I also appreciate the people you chose, because what we're talking about, we said strong voice. We didn't say moral voice, good voice, best voice, somebody who aligns with what I think or feel. We're talking about just what that might mean to us and impact. So that was a really great example. So thank you, Janet. And thank you for being brave enough to, like, you know, turn the mic on and share with us. And I hope I can offer some tools, and that we can be a resource even to each other, because I find that the more the audience participates, the better the session is for like everyone involved. I see Melissa Berry said, I sound old, James Earl Jones. Excuse me. No, you don't. You sound like you know a classic voice. That's what you sound like. I don't care what generation you are, except for maybe like the children today. But the rest of us know that when we hear that distinct voice, it does something. It's commanding. It's powerful. I don't care if it's Coming to America or The Lion King or reading the Bible. I hear James Earl Jones and it like does something. It feels familiar and profound, right? Like that's an excellent example. Yokari, let me know if I said that right, because I want to make sure I pronounce your name right. But I see two great people here. And I definitely want to hear from you. If you're comfortable, you can do it in the chat or take yourself off, or, you know, use a mic. But tell me about Alicia Keys and Oprah Winfrey, because those are two really, really important picks.
Okay, hi everybody. It's Jokari, but
Jokari,
we tried.
Jokari, got it.
Yes, you said it.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I picked both of them. I was gonna say Michelle Obama. I also, you know, I agree with you, Janet. But I mentioned Alicia Keys and Oprah Winfrey as well, because I'm really big on female empowerment, and you know, they are both 2 fellow Aquariuses like me. And they always, I'll speak on Alicia Keys first, but I've been listening to her music since I was a little girl, and I just really love her own personal journey even with like not wearing makeup, and how her music has gotten more raw, her book, More Myself, like she's just very raw and open with people about her, personal journey, and her transformation, her inner transformation. And then Oprah, I mean, I don't think like I have to give her any introduction, like everybody knows how powerful her voice is. And like from her talk show to Super Soul Sundays, like I just
iconic.
Yes, I love just the way that by them sharing their stories, and other people's stories, they can shape a generation and kind of get you to think outside of the box and grow yourself as a person.
I mean,
Yeah.
eloquently and beautifully said. Like, yes, so good. Thank you, Jokati. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Exactly. Two women in two different fields. Yes, they're in entertainment. They have very different styles and tones and how they communicate. But one of the threads that I felt in what you said was about and feeling a connection because of authenticity and honesty, and really just being willing to put themselves out there. I think that is such an important thing for us to identify. And I hope it's a little disarming for us as well, in that it's not necessarily about saying the right thing and doing the perfect thing all of the time. And, and some of when we talked about voice, it was literal, right? Like maybe Nixon or who else was mentioned? James Earl Jones, right? Like just the sound of their voice is so distinct. But for the others, it wasn't even necessarily like having the perfect voice. It was about like how they engaged with speaking, how they engage with the narrative, how they chose to show up and communicate with the world around them. So I hope that that's an encouragement to you, that voice is less about how you specifically sound or how much talent you think you have regarding speaking, and how much you're able to own who you are and what you have to offer as a communicator, as a speaker. I think that shows us how essential that is. And this is a perfect segue, actually, because I want us to start listing some things. If you're taking notes, you can. If you're like, I'm just here to listen, I'll catch the replay, totally fine. But if you are taking notes, I want us to start kind of going over some things that we think makes a speaker amazing. We already started talking about that. Who do we think of when we hear a strong voice? When I think strong voice, who comes to mind? One of the first people that comes to mind for me, Viola Davis. Oh my goodness, probably because I read her book earlier this summer. Also, I'm New York born, but I feel kind of like Rhode Island bred. I lived there a long time, and so it's also home to me. And Viola Davis is kind of like my my muse, she's an icon to me. She's an inspiration. I relate to her background. We walked to the same streets. We were in the same programs. We're both artists. And she is so empowering and inspiring to me. And her deep, like rich mahogany voice is profound, like the sound of it, but also what she uses it to do, and her ability to be so authentic and unapologetically herself, in the way that it impacts her craft. Oh my gosh, right? And I hear Viola's voice, and I know I even have a whole poem that's like dedicated to Viola Davis. I hear it and I know. And so I'm able to kind of identify, once we start talking about, well, why do we think these people have strong voices? We can start picking out some qualities that are similar. Like even if they're not our cup of tea, like even if we have different relationships with each of the speakers, we can start identifying some commonalities. So I have a short list of some things that I want us to just think about, and the floor is open. What's the name of her book? It's not Becoming. It is, hold on, I'm gonna give it to you because
It's Finding Me. It's Finding
Me.
Me. I'm gonna drop it in a link for them.
Let me tell you, Jokati, same. I had it on Audible, and the next time I read it, because I will read it again, it will be like listening to the audiobook and reading the hard copy of the book together. Oh my goodness. The most moving book I've read this year. Definitely highly, highly recommend. Any other bibliophiles like me, Like, get into it. Okay, so when we think about speakers that move us, well, we talked about voice, but that translates also to people who speak and move us, people who show up and we feel a connection with them, or we feel impacted by them, right? Because the impact can be positive or negative, but people who know how to have an influence and impact, right? We want it to be an impact for good, but there are people who do not have morals that align with ours, but they understand communication, they understand influence, and they understand voice. And therefore that's how they are able to have that impact. So there's a thread that kind of runs true to a lot of these things. Some things that stick out. I've got some 5 points that stick out. So we'll start with those. Confidence. And I kind of heard it like, I saw it in the chat. I kind of heard it in some of the descriptions of the speakers or the strong voices that have impacted us or that we just think of when we think of strong voices. Confidence. Confidence is so important because it impacts not just how you show up, but it also has a direct influence on how something is received. And I think this is why it's so important for me for the way that I approach this work, even when I'm coaching, because I'm also a public speaking coach. So even when I was coaching, it's so important for us to start with the foundation of self-awareness of self and building up a confidence in self, because it influences everything you do. It amplifies more than a speaker, more than the volume, the decibel level of your voice. Your confidence amplifies what it is you're saying. And it translates to people. If you could have the most profound thing to say, but if you say it like you don't believe yourself, if you say it like, well, I don't know if I should be here, it's harder for it to receive and land. And there's some people who say some stuff that's wild. I'm gonna use the descriptor wild, right? Like, it's not even like, that's not even deep. That's fake deep. Like, what do you say? But they say it with such a confidence that it has influence, right? So like, confidence in and of itself is so powerful. And one of the best ways we can get to confidence as speakers is learning that having confidence in who we are and what we have to say. So confidence is the first thing. Super essential, very, very important. And if you're like, I am not confident in front of that's okay. We're going to talk about how to become confident. We're going to talk about how to get there. Don't worry. Anyone can become a better speaker. I don't care if you are Michelle Obama or Oprah. Everyone, even if you're excellent, you can become better, which means no matter how much you think you're not a speaker, you can get better. And part of that comes from being aware of who you are and confident in who you are. Because if you're confident in who you are, you're more confident in what you have to say. And this also, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but this also has to do with being very clear on your why. We're going to talk about that in a second. Your why. Why are you speaking? What's the point? What's your message? Being clear on that impacts these things, right? Okay, so first is confidence. Let's move on to our next one, clarity. Clarity, confidence, clarity. Clarity, if we're talking about speakers who are influential, clarity is just similar to voice. We mean it in this abstract concept, kind of, I'm not in an abstract way, but more so in the way we feel a thing, but we also mean clarity in a strategic way, right? So on every level, clarity is super essential. Think about, I may be aging myself a little bit, but for those of you who can remember, there were these commercials where like these Verizon commercials where they're like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And sometimes it come across as like staticky or you couldn't really hear it. Am I alone? Does anybody remember the Verizon commercial? Okay, I might be alone.
Yes, they were amazing.
Thank you. I knew Janet would have my back.
Yeah,
Thank
amazing.
You. Right. But even if it's not that, we've experienced it in real time, right? Where we may be trying to communicate and there's static on the phone, you're losing signal. There's not clarity in the speech. It sounds muffled. Well, as much as we need clarity in communication, meaning literally the way a voice travels, the sound waves to reach someone's ear, and we need clarity in that way, we need clarity in our message. We need clarity in the means with which we choose to communicate. Sometimes we use filler words. Sometimes we put other words there because we're not quite sure what to say, or we're scared of what we truly have to say, and it becomes convoluted instead of clear. Well, the same way bad reception would make a message hard to hear, lack of clarity with our message can also make it hard to hear and receive. So clarity is really important. And that, again, is on every level. It's on how much you enunciate. It's on how the cadence of your voice, the projection of your voice, but it's also being really clear on what it is you have to say. Being very clear, what is the heart of my message? I have to be clear. When we are super vague, when we're super ambiguous, we're kind of like all over the place, it's like static, it's like poor reception. It's going to be hard for the listener to receive. So clarity is super essential. So we've got confidence and we've got clarity. Elizabeth said, this is where I feel. No, this is your opportunity to grow. I don't even want you using that language. This is like, and the fact that you're self-aware is amazing, because it means you're already building strategy. If you can pinpoint where you need to grow, you're more likely to use the tools and resources to grow in that area. What would be worse is if you thought you were like the best speaker in the world and you have the most clarity in the world and you're just confidently confusing people. That would be worse. So like, you've taken the first step to becoming a better communicator and a better speaker, is understanding this is important and I don't quite have it yet. So good for you, Elizabeth, and anybody else who may also be in that space. Okay, the next one is conviction. This is, I keep saying stuff is important, but like, it's all important. Conviction. And we'll get it more into this. I'm going to go over a little bit about rhetorical appeals in a moment, because that's like, we're getting technical now. Like, no, okay, we're getting technical, but there are some elements of rhetorical appeals called ethos, pathos, and logos, which are pretty much the strategies and the elements, even with the traditional appeals. Like way back in ancient society, oration was considered like such an important skill to have. It was esteemed. They would meet in these places with general assembly, and they would have these rhetorical bats of competition, or they would just speak, right? Like, their whole job was to think, philosophize, and be able to effectively communicate that, right? And as they study those elements, ethos, pathos, and logos, we'll talk about what they are. But part of what makes it effective was the capacity for conviction. Where did everybody go? Is everybody still here?
We're here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The format changed a little bit. I'm like, I don't see the faces no more. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I did that. I might have done that. I'll figure it out. We'll finish this up and then we'll figure it out. But it is conviction. Anyone can regurgitate. There we go. There you are. You're back. Anyone can regurgitate an idea or a concept. And if they practice it enough, it'll sound really good. They may have the technical skill. They may have the talent, honestly, but if they do not have conviction, it will not last long. It may burn bright for a short while, but it will not last long, and it will not have lasting impact. Conviction, and conviction isn't always about the right thing. Like, people can be really convicted of the wrong thing, but the thing that makes it impactful is that they believe it. They speak like they're invested in something, and this is why it's so important. Confidence and conviction go together, and it's important to know your why. Do you really believe what you're saying, and why are you saying what you're saying? Part of the work is the strategy, but the other part of the work, when I approach something, even if I'm speaking on something that's like, oh, this is complicated, or like, ooh, I've got an interesting crowd today, or like, how do I navigate this subject in this space? I really got to look for the place of conviction. Where does my why connect with my confidence? Where do those things come together, so that when I'm speaking from a place of conviction? I'm talking about something that I can find a truth in that deeply resonates with me. Because if I can speak in a way where the truth deeply resonates with me, it's going to resonate with others. And I can have everything else on here, but if I don't have conviction for what I'm saying, I may not even be the most confident. But if I have conviction, Like, I really believe this. I'm really invested in this. If I have conviction, like I'm in influence. I know that I'm going to have impact. I know that I'm going to have influence. We're almost at our we have two more points. We have clarity. We have confidence, clarity, and conviction. Another one is passion. This would fall under our pathos of rhetorical abuse. But passion, I want to feel like this again is very closely tied. There you go. You better know your strengths and growths, Elizabeth. Passion is so important. And this is why, again, you find that I'm going to keep circling back to your why. Why are you saying what you're saying? And why? What is the heart of your message? What is your why? Because people can feel your passion. Passion and conviction go together. People can feel that. If you are up there and you sound like you don't care and you don't want to be there, if that's translating, don't even talk. Like, let's not waste our time. Let's not even do this. If you are going to speak, then you need to make sure that there is a passion associated with it. And it's a disservice to your listeners because you think they're dumb. Like, you think that they're gonna just consume what you're saying. You don't really believe in the humanity of your listener. I have this saying where I say our stories are our humanity. Like, this is what makes us who we are. It's our story. It's our narrative. So when you are sharing a story, whether that is something about data, whether it's for a class, whether it's for clients, whether it is for your own freedom, whether it's at an open mic or whether it is at the White House, whatever it is, you are sharing a story. And so if you don't tie that in, and how do we get to passion? Well, we have to go through the first one. We got to figure out, we got to go through reflection and confidence and what's our why and what are we convicted about? And that will help us to get to passion. But we've got to be able, we have to be able to speak with passion. Can I tell you what passion is not, though? Passion is not performance. It can coincide, but it's not performance. Passion is not volume. It doesn't mean the more you yell at us, the more passionate you are. No, you're loud. And I can be loud sometimes. Sorry if I holler at y'all a little bit. I'm passionate. No, but passion isn't volume, right? It's not the same thing. It's got to be an unction within you that impacts the way you convey the story that you're trying to tell. Passion is important. If somebody is passionless when they're speaking, like, don't insult me, don't waste my time. I need to hear some kind of passion, whether it's a soft, quiet passion, or whether it is when that feels like it roars a little bit, right? Whether it is, whether it is, you can even be passionate and like end in a whisper, right? Like, it's not the volume, it is the way that you are connecting with what you're talking about, right? It makes it real for us. And then the last point that we're going to go over of like some things that make amazing speakers is preparation. I know some people are like, yay. Some people are like, I didn't want to hear that. But let me tell you something. Preparation. If you're somebody who's like, I don't have confidence yet, preparation precedes confidence. You want to talk about clarity? Preparation precedes clarity. You know what I'm saying? Like, practice, and this is again, it's true on a strategic level, but it's also true when we think about voice and our lives and our stories. When you practice a thing, it goes from your head to your heart. When you practice a thing, it goes from a concept to reality. It goes from regurgitation to reciting what you actually believe. Like, you need to prepare. You've got to practice. You have to prepare. If you say, for example, if you're Elizabeth, thank you for letting me use you as tribute. But for example, Elizabeth said clarity. I'm not so great at clarity. But if you know that, and you're like, I know that I'm passionate, but I don't necessarily have clarity, preparation is what's going to get you there. It's going to have, and I can tell you it this way. I can use the lens of poetry, right? So I'm a multi-hyphenate, I'm a multi-medium creative, okay? And I have also under that umbrella, I competed professionally, and in professional competitions, slams, national, international slams, you have to utilize, there are time limits on what you have to say. Like depending on those competitions, like the international, the big ones, I had to have a 4-minute poem, a 3-minute poem, a 2-minute poem, and a 1-minute poem. And I came from the background of, oh, they just told me to write a poem for something. I'd be commissioned and I did whatever I wanted to. I have no restrictions. What do you mean? What do you mean, Todd? Do you know what I had to get really good at? Preparation. I said it was like having surgery on my own baby because I had to learn, I've got to get clear. I've got passion. I've got confidence. I've got conviction. You know, I've got all that stuff. I don't have clarity. I have to get clear. I have to decide from practice, from reading it over and over and over again, reciting it over and over and over again, sitting with it over and over and over again, practicing it over and over and over again to identify what is the most essential carrier of my message in these words, in this poem. And I had to be able to take something that may have been 7 or 10 minutes and prepare and work on it, right? Until I got the clarity that I needed so that it was able to be a full, impactful message in 3 minutes or in 1 minute. That's a lot of work, but it was the preparation that made everything else. I had the other stuff, but the thing that tied it together was the preparation. Or there were poems that I could say with passion, but I couldn't say it off page. I had to prepare in order to be confident. I was like, well, what if I mess it up? I had to say it so much. There's some poems that I do that I said it so much that I could do it while brushing my teeth, while in the shower. And now it's route. Like you could tell me to recite the poem and I can just do it because it was preparation. I already had all of the other elements. Preparation is what positioned me. I want you to remember that. If you're writing, write that down. Preparation is what positions you. You can have all of those other things, but honor your story. I realized that I was getting platforms on a national level. And if I was not preparing, I was not properly honoring the story that I deserve to tell. Preparation helps us in all of those other places. And this is where those of us who are like, I'd never do it. I'm so scared. I'm terrified of public speaking. This is where we can transition. It's in the preparation. And preparation can include stuff like really getting clear. Well, why am I doing this? What's the message? Where can I trim the fat on what I'm saying? Preparation will help you if you are using filler words. Everyone uses them. Even as a public speaker, I still use them, but we want to be aware of them, right? Like, am I saying so much that you can't hear what I'm saying? Well, preparation is going to help me to practice that so that what filler words are is actually when it's just your body's playing catch up, right? Your brain is working faster than your mouth. And so it uses a filler word. So it has a little bit of time to catch up with what you're communicating. We naturally do it. But if you are preparing, if you're aware of it, then you can slow down. You can use some tools to help you so that the message you deserve to communicate is received well. Preparation is so important. So confidence, clarity, conviction, passion, and preparation. How are we doing so far, y'all? Are we doing all right? Yes? We're doing good so far? I'm not boring you yet? Okay, good. Good. Okay, great. So I want us to transition a little bit. Now we're going to get a little more technical, and then we'll have some time to kind of like we'll play around, we'll practice a little bit. And of course, I'm going to spend some time at the end just answering questions because I want to hear all your questions and I love to do that. Okay. So I talked a little bit earlier about rhetorical appeals. We're not going to get all into the depths of the history or whatever, but I do want to go over a very quick cheat code of what that means. These are the 3 elements of, they're like the pillars of rhetoric. Think of it that way, right? The pillars of rhetoric. Rhetoric isn't just about speaking well. It is about influence through speech. Okay. And so these are like the pillars that help us. And so these are the ways that I use them as cheat codes to remember what each one means. Okay. So we have ethos, we have pathos, and we have logos. It's a triad. These 3 elements that are pillars in speech with influence. Let's just call it that, like speech with influence. Okay. And so we'll start with ethos. Somebody take a guess. If I use the root word to help me remember what it means. If I said ethos, What word do you think might be associated with that? What pillar is that trying to convey of rhetorical appeal, or with, you know, the influence of speech? Ethos. Just take a guess, y'all. What does it sound like? Ooh, okay, your inner thoughts. Okay, okay. I'm thinking a word. Like if I say ethos, is there a word that it sounds like that it reminds you of? And it's okay if you don't get it. I just want some guesses. Ethereal. Oh, that's a good one. Ethereal. Okay, ethereal. All right. Ooh, Melissa, you just popped up, so I gotta ask now. I'm putting you on the spot, Melissa.
I was trying to get your attention.
What'd you say?
No, I was trying to get your attention. I was going to type it. For some reason,
Oh, I know.
thinking...
I'm just taking advantage of the glitch. Does ethos remind you of any word? Does it sound like another word?
Like giving a toast, like the introduction to...
Ethos, yeah. Like if you hear the word ethos, what might it mean in terms of impact? Just a guess. I just want to hear your voice.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, like giving a toast, like the introduction, like trying to...
We do use these rhetorical appeals. Like a toast is a perfect form of speech. It's a perfect setting where we would apply all of these things. So I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, my students, when I was business communications professor, one of their projects in when they were taking public speaking 101, where they were taking that Com 101 course, we had them prepare toasts for each other. So like definitely relevant to what we're talking about. Definitely need to use those things. Faith, I see you, Faith. I see you. Faith, did you say ethics? That's what I'm talking about. Faith gets a gold star. Very good, very good. All of these were really great guesses. And I love when people just take a risk and put thought out there, because that's how we grow and that's how we learn. And I want you to be comfortable with trying, guessing, asking questions, and not knowing the answer, because that's how we become excellent. We get comfortable, all of those things. But that is actually the correct answer. So when I think ethos, the easiest way for me to remember it is ethics. And it really is, and this is the way it would appeal to, think of it, how can it appeal to the human mind, to the human psyche? When a person can speak in such a way where it appeals to what is right, where it appeals to conviction, where it appeals to morals, where they can provide evidence, where it's presented in such a way where it's like, this is just what's right. This is just what makes sense. It may not be what's right, and it may not be what really makes sense, but they present it in a way where it plays on that inner theme of ethics. So when you think ethos, think ethics. When you're talking about, I want to communicate, I want to be a speaker who has a significant impact, I want you to think about ethos as well. How can I use ethos to make this more engaging? How can I use ethos in what I am presenting to make people feel more connected to what I'm saying, right? And as social workers, this is a great one, right? Because we want to appeal to the moral, what is right? We want to contribute to the world, not as it is, but as it should be. What is ethically and morally aligned with what our point is, what our narrative is, and how can we lean on that in a way that's gonna result in what? In influence. Very good. Okay. Remember, we're not going into a whole class. I'm not grading your papers or your presentations. Don't worry. It's just a quick lesson. Okay. And then the next one is pathos. Pathos. So if we're talking about the influence in speech, it's pathos. Give me a guess. What might pathos be when we're talking about these pillars of influence through speech? What does it make you think of? Pathos. Empathic. Oh, yes. That's good. Oh, Janet, that's so good. There are actually two that come to mind. That's one of them. Empathic. What's the other? There's another one that comes to mind. It starts with a P that comes to mind when I think of pathos. That's so good. Empathic. Yes. There you go. Come on, y'all. Oh, okay. I see persuasion. First of all, yes, girl, that's what rhetorical appeals are. All of this is persuasion, girl. All of it. But faith, so passion, I see two people said passion and empathic are two words that come to mind. I usually shortcut to passion, pathos, passion, but empathic and passion, it all kind of aligns with the same thing. And this element is what is going to more so appeal, which is why empathic is a great word to remember. And so is passion. It's gonna appeal more so to the emotion of your listener. This is where they feel connected to, and the way you present, when you present with passion and when you present with conviction and you present, and this is when we start doing things like we start telling our story and people start connecting. Oh, it's like pulling at their emotions. It's like, I can relate to you emotionally. I can understand you, empathy, right? I can connect with what you're saying. This is one of the tools we use for influential communication as public speakers. So ethos is appealing, our shortcut to remember what it is, appealing to your ethics. Pathos is a shortcut to thinking about appealing to your emotion, to your passion, being functioning from an empathic space, right? The last one is logos. Logos. So we have ethos and pathos, logos. Y'all figured it out. Y'all don't figured it out. You got me. Exactly. Logos, logic. That's how I remember logos and logic. That is literally appealing to the logic of the listeners. Folks who rely on logos it's often going to be content that is, it's presented as though it's really like straightforward. It's the only logical conclusion. They use evidence, and sometimes evidence is fake. Because remember, we're talking about what's influential, but though it feels, and that's why we've got to be careful. But that's why you ever wonder, like, how did y'all believe that? How did y'all believe that? That is obviously ridiculous. How did so many people believe in this thing? Well, if it's presented in a way where it's like, how could you not come to the same conclusion? We want logic. We're actually wired. Your brain is always trying to make things make sense. You're seeking out utilizing logic in your reasoning. So somebody can present it in a way, especially using things like data, numbers, history, research, that's going to appeal to that part of us that wants to reason. So we lean into logos. That's where we're using those things. How can we appeal to people's logic? And this is where we'll see a lot of this use in people who speak and talk about business, sciences, like communication and that nature. But I want you to know that all of us can use that. Even poets, we can lean into ethos, pathos, and logos. And I find that once you have a good understanding of who you are, what's most effective is really leaning into all three. And it may not be the same percentages, right? Somebody may be like, I'm heavy on the logos. I sprinkle a little pathos in there. I sprinkle a little, because that's what makes sense for me and how I'm wired and the message that I'm saying. So this is why it's important to be authentic to yourself and know yourself, because then you can see, well, what is true to me and what can I then enhance? We're not looking for you to make something up. We're looking for you to enhance what you already have based on what your objective is. So then you can lean into those pillars of ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos, pathos, logos. You don't have to say it over them, but say it to yourself. Ethos, pathos, logos. Okay, so those are the pillars of rhetorical appeals. All right, let's get into some strategy. Okay, like let's get into some, how do we put these things together and what are some things for us to remember? And it's not necessarily in order, they're just all things that we should consider, whether it's about us and how it impacts our audience or things that impact us. But this is how we can get into these are some more building blocks. We have a foundation that we've already set, right? We have rhetorical appeals. We have those 5 points that we talked about earlier. We're just gonna build on top of them now. And I'm gonna reiterate, never abandon authenticity. Like, I know you're gonna get so tired of that word today. Oh my goodness. I hope if you don't remember anything else, you remember that you have a voice that matters and you remember the significance of authenticity in you as a speaker. But do not, and so when I give you these tips, it's not about abandoning that. This is not about abandoning your authentic self. It is about enhancing that, amplifying it, magnifying what you already offer the world. Okay. So we already talked about practice. I'm gonna just make another shout out for preparation. Preparation. Practice precedes confidence, right? Like, and I want to trust. And let me tell you what else leads into some of our appeals. What leans into the logos and the pathos, honestly, the logos and the ethos when people are speaking, how confidently they speak. Remember, we were talking about like people believe stuff that doesn't make any sense. If somebody's communicating it super confidently, it's believable. It plays into one of those pillars, right? So I want us to do that as we prepare. It's hard to be confident if you don't know what you're talking about. It's really hard to have something that feels put together if you haven't put enough effort behind the scenes. And so this is why practice precedes that confidence. Okay, this is a practical, technical tip. When you are in a space, speakers, we're always, messing with mics, poets all the time, we're messing with mics and stuff, right? But a good speaker, a mic is just it's like, it's a little sprinkle on top, it's a little sprinkle. It's not the sundae, it's a sprinkle. So a good speaker knows that when we are speaking, as we're up there, right, your mind should not just be, oh, I'm freaking out, but think when you're speaking and you're trying to figure out, how do I approach this? What's my value? I want you to speak to the person in the back of the room, right? And I want you to speak in such a way where you think, what I have to say is so important that I don't even want the person in the back of the room to miss it. So that's how we approach it. And that's strategy wise, right? Like your volume, you shouldn't be dependent on your device in order to communicate effectively to the people that you're presenting to. You want to be able to, I didn't say you have to yell, but you do want to project, and that will change depending on the size of your room. I'm projecting to a certain point, right? Even though I'm in front of a camera and a microphone. But if I were in a larger room, I may adjust how I project, because I want to approach it as if what I have to say is so significant that the person in the back of the room needs to hear it as well. So when you start to get nervous, like, I don't want to, they need to hear it too. So this is, again, on that deeper level of the impact of your voice, but it's also on a practical level of strategy. Your projection, your enunciation, they are essential, right? This is also part of the clarity point that we made earlier. Nobody can receive your message if they can't hear your message. Okay, another mistake that we often make is that people, and I learned this as a performer, as a speaker, even as a voice actor, I learned that people, and I studied it too, we have a natural inclination to speak much faster than we think we're speaking when we're speaking in front of an audience. In your head, you're like, this is a good pace. This is normal. This is how I talk on a regular basis. But if you were to record yourself, especially if you're nervous, if you were to record yourself, you're probably going faster than what's appropriate for the listeners. So it's almost always a good practice. I mean, unless you speak like the teacher from Ferris Bueller, again, aging myself, it's fine. Unless you speak like the teacher from Ferris Bueller, thank you, Razia, you gotta slow down. So unless you speak like them, it's so important that we slow down. So a good practice, two things I like to do, and you'll hear me talk about recording a lot, but record yourself. Exactly. See, Janet is my homie. Yes, Janet. Exactly, Bueller. Like, unless that's how slow you speak, unless that's how you're approaching it, most of us don't speak that slowly. And however, whatever our rhythm of speech, it's usually sped up when we are in public speaking dynamics. So it's really important for you to practice. You're practicing at home. I want you to time yourself to see how long it's actually taking you. And I really encourage you to also record yourself so you can play it back and be like, oh, I sped through that like Flojo. I sped through that like Usain Bolt. I ran through that text because I was nervous, and I can't hear it when I'm saying it. I have to listen to it outside of myself. So slow down, and then just make this practice. When you're speaking, if you think you're speaking at a good pace, slow down a little bit. If you think you're speaking fast, slow down a lot. That's a good rule of thumb. If you think you're speaking at a good pace, slow down a bit. And if you think you're speaking fast, slow down a lot. And if you're like, I'm really nervous, breathe. Sometimes we're scared to breathe when we're speaking. But let me tell you the truth. Sometimes adding oxygen into that moment can actually make your speech more engaging. It can cause the audience to lean in a little bit. So don't be afraid to in through your nose, out through your mouth, take a breath and engage again, but slow down. Your message is important enough that people should hear it, okay? Again, y'all gonna hear me talk about this a lot. I drive home points that are important. Know your objective. So we know you've heard me say know your why. Why are you speaking? And what is your goal at the end of this? If you go into it and your goal is just to make it to the end, you might do all right, but you probably won't be your best self, right? Why are you saying this? Is it because you want to grade, or is it because you have something to say? Why are you saying this? Is it because you want to advocate for the people who need to hear it, or you want to tell a story that's significant, or it's because you want to be a catalyst for some kind of change where you need people to respond to you? You need them to agree with you, to sign up for something. You need to be very clear on your objective. This is, again, ties back to that theme of clarity. You got to be clear on what your objective is. If your why becomes just doing the task that you're assigned to do, you may get through it, but you will not be the best version of yourself. And I do think it is a bit of a disservice to what you're doing. And let me tell you, it's not about, we use emotion, but this isn't about emotion. Emotion influences what we do, but you need something that's going to sustain you when you don't feel like doing it. You need something that's going to encourage you to keep speaking when you feel like you're nervous and your knees are wobbling. You need something that's going to push you to speak when the circumstances are just not ideal, and maybe you haven't slept and your kid was colicky all night, and maybe your supervisor's not supporting you and it's frustrating. You got to know what your objective is, right? Like, this is a discipline. This isn't about our feelings. This is a discipline, and knowing your why helps you get there. Why are you speaking, and what is the impact or outcome that you hope to gain? Be very clear on that. It's also important to remember that what you have to say, this is always important. There's going to be a voice inside of you that tells you that you should just shut up. There's going to be a voice inside of you that tells you that somebody can say it better. There's going to be a voice inside of you that says it's unnecessary for you to speak right now. There's going to be a voice inside of you that says nobody is listening. Do me a favor and tell it to shut up. You've got to tell it to shut up. You have to remember that what you have to say is valuable. How you approach what you speak about is going to be directly impacted by whether or not you think you have something important to say. So you got to learn how to tell those voices to shut up. This is why I'm big on affirmations, because for every lie that feels very loud, I've got to drown it out with something that's true. I've got to drown it out with something that's affirming. When you're doing the work and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and that feeling tells you that you should jump ship, you got to be able to tell it to be quiet. You need that thing that pushes you further so that you can give it the preparation it deserves, so that you can give it the passion and the conviction that it deserves, the confidence that it deserves, okay? That's super essential. And remember, who you are matters as much as what you say. This is not just about sounding pretty. So many people can sound pretty, especially nowadays. You can go to YouTube University, you can fake the fun, you can do so many things. It's who you are matters as much as what you are saying. So you better be clear on who you are and be aligned with it, because we can tell. We can tell. Give your audience some credit, they can tell. And how you see yourself impacts how people see you. So that's why this is not necessarily about a performance, it's about the work. I know y'all thought y'all was just coming to hear about some public speaking skills, but these are like life skills that translate to what we do in public speaking. And how you say what you say is just as important as what you say. So we know this, right? Like, we know when we talk about, you might have heard that most of our communication is nonverbal. And so a lot of people only translate that to body language, and that does play a role. Like, if you're like, you're like hiding from the mic, right? That's going to translate. That's just as important as how prolific your words are. But it's also how you say it, like your countenance, your volume, how you communicate, how you enunciate, whether you like at a certain moment you dial it back and you like change your cadence in your space so the audience can lean in, or whether you pick up the pace and you start to increase your volume and you get more passionate, right? You get more, you let them know that you're feeling something deeply. It's just as important as the words you're saying. I can say something laughing, crying, whispering, and they will land differently with my audience. So I just wanted to share that with you. What you say is just as important as how you say it. Okay, so some things that we should be aware of when we're shaping a speech. I want you to think about it like a couple things to think about. Now that we have the approach of like execution, let's talk about like how we put those pieces together. Be very clear on the objective, right? And you want to think about your objective. You want to think about a speech similar to a paper. Hi. Sorry, I saw a cute kid on the camera. My bad. So you really want to think about it similar to a paper, or like not even a paper. Let's go back. Like when we would write essays, anybody had to write essays in school, and they would teach you like the sandwich method of your essays. Like this is the bread, and this is the meat, and this is the whatever, right? You want to think about your intro, your middle, and your conclusion. When you are shaping your speech, you want to think. You need to get their attention. What do we used to call it? The hook, right? You need to hook them. If you need to hook them in reading, if somebody's reading a story or they're reading a paper and there needs to be a hook immediately, I want you to think about your speech the same way. People have really short attention spans. I'm surprised you're even paying attention now, honestly. And the attention spans shorten because they're even shorter now than they were before because of how technology has evolved us. It's changing our brains and our capacity to pay attention. If you don't get them within the first 10 seconds, you may have lost them. So when you're designing your speech, you want to think about the hook. How can I grab them? Maybe you want to lean into your rhetorical appeals. Maybe you want to say a statistic that might jump out at them. Maybe you want to share a personal anecdote that will get them thinking and feeling connected to you. This is why it's really important to know your audience. Knowing your audience is part of preparation. Are you speaking to a panel of professors? Are you speaking to 12-year-olds? Are you talking to a mother who has been incredibly traumatized and who has marginalized identities? You know, or are you speaking to a government official who doesn't really connect or care about what you're talking about? You got to know your audience and think about what's going to hook them, because what you have to say is important and they need to listen. So you start with the hook, and then because that's going to be the first thing that grabs them. It's whether or not they're going to listen for the next however many minutes is what you say in that first part. Then when you think about the body of it, that's the meat. That's where you give flesh to your story. That's where you make sure that they gain, you know, if you said something in the beginning, you justify it in the middle. If you told the story in the beginning, you pull the threads together. You make it make sense as to why it supports your objective. And you make sure that it's worthwhile. And you want meat, not fat. So you want to trim out the fillers that maybe aren't the most effective or aren't essential to conveying your story, right? You want to make sure that if you are strategizing with making sure you're using things like research, or you're using things like points that are relevant to the audience, that this is where you highlight them, and you want to be strategic about it. Maybe you have 3 points, boom, boom, boom. Or maybe it's not 3 points, but it's organized in a way where you know you're hitting your points. That's what happens in the middle. Same thing is if you're like doing an essay, and if you're making a point that's super significant, you should be supporting it, right? Like speech, they have relations. And then when you get to the end of your, whatever your speech is, you have to remember, think of it like this. If somebody didn't hear anything else you said, they may forget the middle. In fact, they're going to forget most of the middle unless they're really connected to it. But this is why your closeout needs to be strong. If your intro and your closeout, you got to hook them. Your middle is keeping them, but your closing, if they don't remember, think of it like that. If they don't remember anything else, leave them with something that will stick to them, that they're going to remember. So as you're shaping your words, you're putting things together, just try to have a little shape. And it's so flexible. There's so many ways that you can do this. It's not rigid. It's just to kind of give you foundation to work from. It's just to give you an outline, and you can fill it as uniquely as you desire. But those are things that we know are effective, that we know from studying audiences and speakers that are effective, and that we want to consider when we're designing our speeches. Okay. And hold on, I'm going to give space. How are we doing? Because I did a lot of talking just now. A lot of talking. How are we feeling? We okay? Can you do me a favor? Because we're going to be closing out soon, y'all. We're going to be closing out, and we'll do a little activity for you, and we'll then leave it open for questions. So far, we're going to take 2 minutes to do this. Give me one thing that stuck out to you so far. We talked about a lot of stuff, but of everything we just went over, give me one thing you're like, that stuck out to me. I remember that part. You can just put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, but one thing so far where you're like, that, I don't remember 90% of what you said, Queen, but I remember that.
Preparation, that definitely, I wrote it down because that was really a good one to focus on.
Preparation. You're in good company, because thank you, Razia. Janet said the same thing. How many of you be preparing with procrastination? Right? Like, oh, I'm exposing like that preparation of procrastination. Somebody said practice. Yes, it's all in the family of preparation. We sometimes spend so much time being anxious about what we have to do, that we don't focus on the thing that we actually can, what we can do. So we've got to be strategic against it. I'm a natural procrastinator. People don't tell you the truth. I'm a truth teller. I am, and I realize it's because I'm a perfectionist and I'm ADHD and I'm anxious. I've been anxious. So it leads to that. But preparation, I learned to start treating it as instead of something to be intimidated by, it's something that's it's a tool in my arsenal, and my preparation doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Once I learn my own patterns and systems, I'm okay. So yeah, preparation. So many of the issues we face when it comes to public speaking can be mitigated by preparation. I'm so glad you said that. Chokari said, the voice inside of you is going to tell you to shut up. That what you have to say isn't important, or that someone else can do it better than you. Tell that voice to shut up. I know that's, woo! Yes, I know that's right. I know that's right. And you be ready. And if there's a lie you believe about yourself when it comes to speaking, write it down and identify it, and then write an affirmation that says the other way. And feel free, if you want to use the affirmations I gave, if one of those speak to you, feel free to use those, but have something ready. Whenever that voice gets loud, have something ready to muzzle it. You can't do this. I can do anything I put my mind to. Somebody can say it better. Yeah, but they can't say it like me. No one can. Right? Have an affirmation ready to shut that lie down. Faith says preparation is what positions you. Woo! And know your why. Yeah, Faith. Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, see, y'all are catching the gems. Y'all are catching it. Thank you for taking a second to share that. I hear somebody talking.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi, how are you?
First of all, I'm overjoyed to hear your voice right now. I'm so glad you have something to share.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to mention what stuck out with me is practice, 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 as well as clarity.
Yes. So, y'all are catching it. So important. Practice, 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 clarity. The kinks get worked out in practice. They do. And eventually, once you practice practicing, stuff will become second nature to you. So now your practice time looks different. You don't have to worry about this part of it because you've invested so much time that now it becomes second nature. So now you can spend your time doing other things, and your preparation looks different, but you just have to commit to that practice, practice, practice. Elizabeth said, if you think you're speaking at a good pace, slow down a bit. And if you think you're speaking fast, slow down a lot. Yes, yes, so important. Y'all are catching the gems. That's so good. Okay, so I want to transition into a little interactive, and then we're going to go into questions. We're only going to do this for no more than 10 minutes, and then we'll spend our last bubble of time Q&A. Okay, just shoot out whatever questions you have for me. So how many people have heard of like an elevator pitch?
Yes.
Anybody want to share what they think elevator pitch is?
Hi, it's Tanya
Yes.
again.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Basically, you're giving a small synopsis of who you are, and it's like if you're like an interview in an elevator, so to speak, you're just basically giving a short overview of yourself.
Yes, and listen, you said that was great. Laquita said selling yourself within the first few minutes. Jasmine said something I don't typically enjoy. All of those things are relevant, but yes. So yeah, an elevator pitch, you know, it's short, it's succinct. It's a professional introduction that can be completed, again, like Tanya said, right, in that time that it would take from an elevator to go from one level, for an elevator ride, essentially. Usually, depending on who you ask, it should be 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Some people say 30 seconds to 90 seconds. And so, you know, they used to tell us all the time that we had to do these. And I used to do projects with my students formerly in preparing them with their elevator pitch. Today, we're not going to do that specifically, so to speak. But I want us to kind of work on, I'm going to call it a connection conversation more so than an elevator pitch. Okay, like a connection conversation. Because what I found is that you can practice and regurgitate a really well-rehearsed little 30-second speech to network or to connect with people or to present something significant about who you are. But I think what matters more than that, like it doesn't always build the connection. So I still teach it. We find ways to make it, you know, but I think it's more so about, can I have conversations, whether that's a conversation with me in an audience, or if it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 10, can I have a conversation that connects with people? I think that's the most important thing. So when we think about it that way, even when I do teach it, the elevator pitch in the traditional way, right? Like the thing is being able to make that connection between personal voice and professional pitch. What's the bridge for that, right? So the best elevator pitches, in my opinion, or conversation connections, you know, connecting conversations. They are informative, they're engaging. So they're practically informative, but they're engaging. Like you weren't like, I had to endure that for, wow, 90 seconds never felt so long. It's not that, right? Like people enjoy that engagement. It feels engaging. It's succinct enough where they don't get all of the information, but they whet their palate. Like it's enough to make them want more. You inspire the listener to want more. And what I want to say super clearly for us is that let's be very clear. I may sound different than whoever else has taught you, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, but from my perspective, I do not approach it as you trying to prove to someone that what you have to say is worthwhile, that you're good enough, I don't approach it that way. I don't teach professional development, job interviews, but I don't teach any of it that way because I don't believe that. I don't think it's about trying to prove to someone that you are good enough. I know that's what they'll tell you. And that's even why, Tanya, I'm open to the word selling, but I try not to use that because it makes it seem like we got to prove something. I think it's about knowing that you're already good enough, because you are. And what you're doing is seeking a connection that's mutually beneficial. But isn't that what we're doing whenever we're public speaking? Like, we're seeking connection and we want it to be mutually beneficial. We want to gain something, but we want to give something. And I think of these things. I don't care if it's a job interview or if you're speaking to the UN, right? It's an opportunity for collaboration. So when you think about these connection conversations, right? It's an opportunity for collaboration. It's a I'm already good enough. I'm here because I'm good enough. I'm speaking, I'm opening my mouth because I'm good enough. there's something you have that I benefit from. There's something I have that you would benefit from. This is an opportunity for collaboration. It is mutually beneficial. Okay, I don't care if you're in that office trying to get a promotion, or if you are trying to appeal to 60 of a clinic's clients. I want us to think about that. So the things that should go into that, I want, and this is important for you to have, because you never know who you're going to meet or what that's going to look like. And it can translate in so many different ways. But my encouragement to you is include things like, who are you? Because they don't know who you are. Who are you, like at your core, but who are you, like generally speaking, right? I know that I'm a multi-medium creative. I'm a multi-hyphenate. I'm a storyteller. I am, who are you? And my name is Gabrielle Quingy Gibson. Like, who are you, right? What is your name, and then your role and your background? Not your whole background. Make them interested in getting to know the rest of it, but give them enough so that they want to listen to you. Remember, that hook is a short window. So who you are, your name, your role, your background, and the context. Why is that relevant to this person right now? Maybe it's important for me to communicate that I have a background in doing this in like almost 20 years. It says 17, but now we're at like 18, 19. So almost 20 years of experience. And this is what I do for a living, blah, blah. So that if I'm going to teach people about it, they should probably know that I do it, right? Like, that's relevant for the context. That's relevant for the connection. Who are you connecting to? You should know them. Make it real. If you're speaking at an event, Janet's got to speak on Thursday. Who are you speaking to? Who are you trying to connect with? Make it real. Identify that your objective, establish the connection with them, make it relevant to them. I know that you're excited about this, but why do they have to be excited about it? Where does your story and their story intersect? They may not know why, but you're going to make it clear. You have to know why. And then I want you to leave, whenever you leave those spaces, make an ask. Leave a door open. Sometimes we're going to take information and then we run away. Then we leave the door kind of closed. It is a conversation. In a conversation that you want to continue, you ask open-ended questions. You leave the door open so it can continue. And so I want you to make an ask, and I want you to be open. That's okay, Janet. And I want you to be open. I was actually going to have us do a little practice. But I think I'm going to pivot, because it's 7:29, into Q&A. Janet, before you go, if you have a question you want to ask, feel free to ask. Otherwise, thank you so much for spending this time.
You were wonderful. Thank you. I will use some of these skills on Thursday.
Listen, Razia will have my contact information. If you want to follow up and tell me how your speech went, you let me know. Thank you for being such a wonderful part of this presentation, Janet.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck. God see you on that speech. Thank you for letting us know. To the rest of our brilliant social work students, I want to open up the door for you if you have questions. So, what'd you say, Janet?
I can't leave. I just came back.
I want you to stay too.
It's
So
meant to be here, Janet.
It's a sign. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a sign. Bye.
Bye, Janet. So I hope those are helpful tools and tidbits on how to differently approach a speech, how to differently approach even something like a pitch, even something like a networking opportunity, whether your audience is one person or whether it's thousands of people. All of these things are relevant and they all apply. So now I really just want to open it up if you have questions specifically about anything that we've gone over, or any tools or strategies, or even my experience in speaking. And lastly, before I say that, I just want to acknowledge your nerves. Is anybody concerned about their nerves when they're speaking? You can tell me. It's okay. This is a safe space. Melissa, I see your hand and I feel you. I hear you, Melissa. Jasmine, okay. Yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to address nerves. I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to address nerves, and then I'm going to answer questions because I see them already coming in the chat. So in terms of nerves, I want to identify that it's a very normal thing to have nerves. And some of the best speakers still get anxious before they go up. So I want us to have a coming together moment that it's a very normal thing. 2, I want to acknowledge that the way you feel when you're anxious and nervous and the way your body responds when you're very excited about something it's almost identical hormonally. It's very similar. So when you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm really nervous, I want to encourage you to think about that means that I care, I'm excited. When you feel those nerves trying to choke you out, like, whoa, I'm like my stomach's turning out, I'm excited because I care about this. I'm excited because this matters to me. And then we already talked about one of our tools that is so like important in preparing against nerves. The more prepared you are, the more you have tools in your arsenal to combat those nerves. And that's in logistics because you can, and it's also talking yourself down. When you've actually prepared, when you practice and when you rehearse, you can ground yourself. You can say, I'm really nervous right now. Okay, but that means I'm excited and that means that I care about what I'm doing. You can then tell yourself like, I know this, I've prepared. I have a voice and it matters. I have a story and it's mine to tell. Like, I'm intelligent and capable. I've done the work. I've timed the speech. I've practiced. I've prepared. I've researched. You every time you're preparing and you're listening, and you're putting stuff in your bank account. So when it's time to go present and you're nervous, guess what? You can make a return on what you deposited. You can be like, no, I practiced this. I planned. I prepared. I've got this. So you want to do that and ground yourself. Grounding activities are very important for those of us who navigate anxiety in those spaces. And then I want you to do some deep breathing. I know it sounds woo-woo, but let me tell you, scientifically speaking, if you are super intentional about how you breathe, you can regulate, you can reduce your cortisol levels. That's that hormone that's produced when you're stressed out. It helps to, as your brain is receiving that oxygen and it's regulating, right? It can help regulate your blood pressure and it can help you to think more clearly. So if you combine preparation, if you acknowledge that you're just nervous because you're excited and you care about what you're doing, if you practice grounding and affirming yourself and self-talking, you're going to be able to approach it a lot differently. And you don't have to get rid of the nerves. It's about regulating them. I speak all the time and I love speaking, but sometimes I get up to perform and I feel like my stomach's in my throat. And I've been doing it since I was little. And I still have to walk through it. So I just want to encourage you that at any point in time, even the best speakers, at some point, we go through it as well. Use your tools. One of the things people don't do is they forget to use their tools. So use the tools in your arsenal. Do your deep breathing. Make sure you're prepared so you can make, you can cash out all that effort you deposited in your preparation. Affirm yourself. That voice that's talking crazy, make sure you tell it to be quiet with affirmations, and you speak about why, and you remember your why. I know I'm nervous, but this message is important and I have to get it out. So I hope that helps with those of us who are navigating nerves when it comes to this stuff. Okay, let's get into questions. Laquita says, what do you do when you go into a speaking engagement, confident and passionate about what you're talking about, but the audience is blah? Oh, that's a good question. I have found that I don't do well with awkward silence, especially in an in-person setting. Well, a couple things. Let me tell you. One of them is every speech is not an all-star speech, so it is okay. So we've got to use a different barometer sometimes of what a successful speech is. Every audience isn't the same. Every speech isn't the same. One. So let's just look. Everything isn't going to be super engaged, and get that out of your head. You can only focus on what you can control. Okay? if you focus on your preparation and you're bringing passion and you're bringing engagement, sometimes you can do your very best and it still isn't perfect. We've got to just accept that early on. Before we get there, it may not be perfect, but I know I can give my best. That's what you got to tell yourself before you go and say, it may not be perfect. I can't control anything else, but I can give my best to this. So that's one thing. Secondly, I will say, get friendly with silence. And it's hard. Any of you, and I've had students like this all the time, and I used to kind of be like this too. Like silence is so like mixed, it's so nerve-wracking that you feel like you have to fill it. Does anybody feel like they have to just like, I don't know what to do? Or they immediately assume they're bombing if it's silent? Silence isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes people are nervous. Sometimes people are thinking. Sometimes they need a second to warm up. You can't control that. But if you let them know that there's room for their silence, you take control back of the room. Okay? And then you can only control what you can control. And push through. And here's another thing that I will say, because I have been in rooms where I'm like, whoa, especially as a performer, or even whether it's speaking or performing. And what I had to commit to was what we talked about in point one. I've got to give my best regardless of what I'm receiving, because even if it's just one person who's gaining something from this, even if it's just one person, or even if somebody could be gaining something from it and not be, maybe they're stoic, maybe they're not vocal, maybe they're not exuberant, but I got to give my best for that person. Even if it's just one person, I push through and I give my best. If I'm performing and I get no feedback, I'm going to give the best that I can as if I'm getting all the feedback in the world, because it's a discipline. It's nice to have all of that engagement, but it's a discipline of excellence. You give excellence, whether it's one person, 100 people, or 1,000 people. And if you can get really good at giving excellence when it's, for lack of a better term, when it's whack, then you're going to be so conditioned and disciplined to like knock it out the park when people are engaged. You know, their fire will fuel your fire. But when you make a practice of it, you get to fuel your own. Like, y'all not going to stop me from being great. You can receive it or not, but I can only control what I can control. And it's common. Don't feel weird. Like, if somebody says they've never had a whack audience or like a low engagement, they're lying, and you shouldn't listen to them in that regard. We've all experienced it. It's just, how do we navigate it? How do we regulate ourselves in those spaces? I hope that was helpful. Thank you. Okay, it was. All right, Faith. I'm all about practice and preparation, but how can you work to not sound overly rehearsed? That's really good. I'm absolutely terrified to speak in public. Oh, that's super normal, as we learned. A lot of people are scared to speak in public. Part of what helps it to not be overly rehearsed, this is what I've learned. I've learned that there's a point we want to get to where we just know it. Like, you're so prepared, you're so good at it, where you just know it. But that's not where you stop. That's kind of where it really starts. I know that sounds weird. I know, but stay with me. Once you get to the place of truly knowing something, then you can get to feel. Like, once you get past know, then you get to feel. So it's kind of like one of the things we say when we're teaching, when we're going over business communications and like English, you know, all the basics of like English and grammar and stuff like that. As writers, we tell the students that you've got to learn the rules first. But once you know the rules, then you can break them. Right? So you've got to know your stuff. And it sounds like you're already good at that. Know your content and do your best to prepare for that content. But once you get to the point where you know it, now it's time to feel. Because if you're still trying, like, because there's a difference between, even with poetry, there's a difference between recalling something you memorized and performing something. If you've just gotten to the place where you can recall a thing, you're not done yet. You're just getting started. That's the space where now you can feel it. There's some poems where I don't, because like, especially there's this one I have, it's a 1-minute piece. It's probably the best memorized poem that I have. But it's so in my bones that I got past the point of like knowing my content, that now whenever I do it, I get to fully feel it and be there. And that's where I encourage you to go next. Once you did all that practice, is like, now you remind yourself, well, I know what I know, now I can feel it. Now I can be, and once you give yourself permission to feel what you're saying, it no longer becomes route, and it doesn't feel starchy or robotic. And if you're having trouble getting there, I want you to go back to your why. So many of the issues we face with our speech is we've disconnected with our why in some way. Something became more important than why. The nerves, the context, the audience, something became more important than the why. So when you get to that place where you're like, I'm not connecting, go back to what your why is. I hope that is helpful. Okay, let's see, Faith. Gotcha, Tanya. I tend to fumble over my words when I speak, and then it can get worse sometimes. Okay, Tanya, I think this may be a function of nerves. And I am taking a guess at this, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering if when that's happened, has somebody made you feel badly about it? Or have you made you feel badly about it? No, no one has. Good. So then that means it's you making you feel badly about it. It's the internal voice saying that there's something wrong when you do that. So I think one of the things that is going to be helpful with working through that is first of all, giving yourself permission. Fumbling is not the worst thing that you can do, right? Fumbling means that you made an effort. Otherwise, it'd be silent. So if you're fumbling, you have to give yourself permission that, like, first of all, it's okay if I mess up. That means I'm putting forth an effort. And then I think what's going to be helpful for you, again, the practice, the preparation, super, super helpful, super, super important, because you learn your rhythm. I also think what may be helpful for you is identifying, like, as you're practicing your speech, once you get to the point where you're like saying it out loud, record yourself and like listen. And if there are parts where you tend to fumble over more, then you can identify those and make sure that you're taking extra care with those places. So that means when you rehearse it, you're like, okay, I'm coming to that second part of the speech, and this tends to make me a little, I get a little jumbled up. I'm going to make sure I slow down. Like if I'm reading from a paper, I'm going to highlight where I need to slow down so that I take time for my words. And then guess what? If you fumble anyway, we pause. We just, and we pick back up. We pick back up right where we left off. Because what I want to encourage you with is that your audience, they want you to win more than you realize. Your audience also they don't want to hear a bad speech. They don't want to be bored. They don't want to be whatever. Your audience, and we sometimes think it's like we put so much pressure on us, but they also want you to win too, because we want to experience a good presentation. So think about that. Like if I mess up, it's okay. I can breathe and pick up where I left off, because people are for me. They want it to go well. They want me to land on my feet, and I can take a second to recalibrate. Never be afraid to take a second to recalibrate in a speech. Like you're not a robot, you're human. So if you need some oxygen, if you need a second, you can recalibrate. But yeah, prepare by identifying where you frequently may make mistakes or mess up, make those accommodations. And then when it happens, if you fumble again, take your time. If you're fumbling, it's probably a function of nerves. You got to slow down, take your time, and reset. Okay. I hope that was helpful. Elizabeth, I have a website with my affirmations? You need them constantly. I actually don't have all of the affirmations, but I do have a collective called Living Unfiltered. And I'm going to make all of the affirmations available to you. All of the ones that I just said, I'm going to make sure Razia has a copy of them so you can have and you can practice them. And those are, anybody who needs them, you can have them freely. I will make sure that you have those affirmations for sure. More than happy to do that for you, Elizabeth. Jokati says, I mentioned that I'm a poet. Hold on, I'm scrolling. I just lost it. I'm coming, Jokati. I'm coming. I thought, okay. I'm a poet. How did I get started? You love poetry, you're a writer? Then let's stay connected. I would love to connect with you for sure, because I love fellow writers and poets. You've never been to a poetry slam. I don't know where you're located, where Where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey.
You're in Jersey? I actually want to slam in Jersey. Like, I know the poetry scene out there. So if you are interested in going, just stay looped, stay connected. I'll be happy to connect you with the poetry scene over there so that you get to go to an event. They have some, one poet from Jersey is like world renowned. One of the most amazing poets that I've ever heard. So you've got amazing artists in your state. Secondly, how did I get started? I have been a creator since I was a small teen, like very, very small. I was a dancer, I did all of that stuff. So all the things I did creatively as a youth. And then when I was like 7, I started writing songs. And I actually was a songwriter before I was a poet. The songwriting evolved into poetry. And then like, I used to just only be in my journals, and then there were opportunities for me to share a little bit more in like high school and stuff like that. And then after that, I'm trying to think, after high school, college was a big turning point for me, poetry wise. I just felt the shift in me as a writer, like a significant transformation in me as a writer. It felt like supernatural. It really felt like God like downloaded stuff and I became a different writer. And then I started performing locally. Like I went to open mics. I performed a lot at like church and community stuff. I did like the groundwork, like, and then by word of mouth, people started hearing about my poetry. That's how it started to grow. And then it reached another level a few years later when I started competing at poetry slams nationally. And I had already been doing it professionally, but that really sharpened me as a poet. It put me before a bunch of different audiences. I released my first poetry like chapbook, like that really helped. So for you, I would say start where you are and write a lot, write often, write without criticizing yourself, read a lot. I listened to so much poetry. I never thought I'd be a professional. I was so nervous to say it on stage and then compete. Are you kidding me? Never. But I evolved. I continue to immerse myself in poetry. So I encourage you, if you love the craft, continue to immerse yourself, get connected to people in your community and start sharing. And listen, some poems are going to be bad. Some are going to be amazing. The point is to write well and write often and write authentically. But we can talk about poetry offline because yes. I love it. I'd love to. Thank you for your question. Tanya, did you just pop up, Tanya? Oh, it might have just been a mic thing. No pressure. No, I'm no longer pressuring you. Don't worry. Okay, you just popped up on the screen. I thought you had something to say. Melissa, what do I do when I'm not passionate about my speech or communication because it's an obligation? That's an excellent question. Excellent question. One of the things that I do is I do my best to find a thread that I do care about. And this was really prevalent in school or even for some work presentation that I didn't want to do. I did my best to find a framing that connected to what I had a conviction for. So, I mean, I could be talking about, let's say like potatoes. I'm like, I don't care about potatoes. Like, I mean, I do. Potatoes are delicious, but I mean, like, I don't want to do presentation on potatoes. But if they're talking about potatoes, is there a lane where I could talk about how my culture uses, I don't know, is there something about potatoes? Well, there are potatoes that maybe my culture uses, right? That make me feel connected to my identity somehow. And maybe that's not a whole part of the speech, and maybe that's not the heart of it, but if there is that kind of connection that I can make to personalize, then it becomes a little more real to me and relevant to me. So it's like, is there a way you can frame it to connect you to the work? And if you can't do an immediate connection, then I really just encourage you to look at the bigger picture and find the larger connection. Like, are you doing this presentation to get a degree so you can change lives? then you need to make sure that that is at the forefront of whatever you're doing. Is it for a job that you're really passionate about, but you really just don't like, you don't like that particular presentation? Then you do a bigger picture, like, well, this is to get me to something that's really important. Therefore, this is important. So it's all about your framing. But if you can make it personal in some way, shape, or form, that's the most important way, I think, in my experience. Okay. Oh, Elizabeth left. I'm so glad you were here, Elizabeth. Somebody tell Elizabeth that they were great. How can we get comfortable with our voice if we say things like, I don't like my voice? Stop saying that. And I say that because I actually am a voice actor and I used to hate my voice. Like, it was a big insecurity for me. And then people were like, oh, your voice is great. You have a voice like butter. And I didn't know that if I stayed in that lane of being negative towards myself, I would have missed out on a whole career opportunity that I actually love. It's one of my favorite things to do. And literally I have to hear my voice all the time for the work that I do now. So change the way that you speak about yourself and get comfortable hearing your voice. One of the ways that I got comfortable was I recorded a lot of stuff. I had to hear myself all the time. And eventually I had to kind of get over it. Like, I literally put my voice on it. I recorded my speeches. I recorded things. I listened to playbacks of hearing my own voice. I would practice, changing my voice to make sure it sounded, I was projecting well, or I was, pronouncing and enunciating things a certain way. And then I even, like, on Waze, like, the Waze GPS, I put my voice on the Waze app as a GPS option to get used to it. I hated it. I mean, it still makes me cringe a little bit sometimes, but it's almost like exposure therapy. Like, you're exposing yourself to that thing until you find value in it and you change the way you talk about yourself. Even if you don't like your voice, you're going to change that. Like, my voice is unique and I'm glad I get to learn to love my voice. My voice is necessary. And these are all the ways I get to use it. And expose yourself to your voice and you'll get comfortable with it. And maybe you don't fall in love, but you will get to a place where you're like, yeah, like, it gets the job done, So really change how you speak about it and make sure you're constantly exposing yourself to your voice. I think that was the last, one more question. Okay. Oh no, it wasn't a question. You're in, okay. Jokari says, thank you. Oh, you are so welcome. You're in Camden. Got you. Immerse yourself. I can't recommend it enough. Find poetry that you love, listen to it nonstop. I mean, I went through a phase where I was like, I had an addiction to poetry. Immerse yourself, expose yourself to the culture. So much of what I was intimidated by was a facade. I ended up just finding people in space to tell my story and people who had stories I really wanted to hear. And if I let fear stop me, like, I'd be limiting so much of the world that I live in now. So just get your feet wet and immerse yourself. That's what I would recommend. I'll take one last question if there's a final one. But I think I covered all the ones that were submitted. I think that's it. If there are no other questions, I just want to thank you all. Listen, it's not easy to hang for 2 hours, but you did it and you're champs. And I hope you got some tools that make you feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more equipped, a little bit more prepared. Listen, your voice is so essential. And so the next time you've got to do anything in front of anyone, I want you to remember that you have a voice that matters, and that you have a story and only you can tell it. I don't care if they have the best voice in the world, or if they have a voice like James Earl Jones, or they've got the charisma of Michelle Obama and Oprah put together. I want you to know that they could never tell your story the way that you can. So if you can apply some strategy with some heart, I think you're going to be an excellent speaker. So thanks for letting me walk you through this journey. Thank y'all so much. Bye.
Much, Queen G. Oh my God, thank you so much. My phone has literally been blowing up from compliments of your flawless skin, your voice, and how you have literally just transformed so many people's thought about speaking. And I'm gonna practice real quick. I'm gonna slow down. So thank you so much for hanging out with the NASW New Jersey chapter and with our students. I know that I left empowered and ready to take over the world as a public speaker. So I can just attest that they probably left with so much more value added to them.
I'm so glad to hear it.
I just want to say I look forward to seeing you guys in November and take everything you learned here and go into your classes, into your internships, and utilize your voice, because what did Queen G say? You have a voice and it
Matters.
So thank you so much and have a great
You're welcome.
of your evening.
Bye, y'all. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
y'all.
Thank you.